The topic of hand is talking about translucent zirconia and more specifically why a gradient material. Now I need to define a couple of these things for you because I know you've heard some of these terms, but what does all this really mean and how does that apply to your daily practice, whether you're a dentist out there and or lab or a combination, both of you working together? Well, ceramic engineers, that people who know how to work with these materials, knew from the ceramic world that if you increase the amount of yttria, added more yttria oxide to it, it would cause a phase change, a different shape type of zirconia, okay? A cubic phase of zirconia. Cubic phase zirconia, 100% cubic phase zirconia is a fake diamond, okay? So it's very translucent, all right? We don't want a fake diamond for our teeth, but we do want an increased translucency. So at about 5% yttria, we end up with about 50% cubic phase and a much more translucent material. All right, so what's happened since then is everything in between. We've had 4Y, 4.2Y, 3Y, but you're going to hear mostly those terms, 3Y, 4Y, and 5Y, with 4Y being an intermediate amount of cubic phase, which means an intermediate amount of translucency. That is the more translucent, the 5Y, and then in the middle, let's say more dentin color, that's intermediate translucency, the 4Y, and then the 3Y maybe toward the core, okay? That has more opacity, but much more strength. So this is the idea of this. So an optimization of translucency, maybe where you need it on the surface, and then toward the core, toward the connector, an optimization of strength. This natural teeth have gradient of color, of course, right? We see that as we look at a natural tooth, but it also has a gradient of translucency. Okay, that is the huge optical or aesthetic benefit of this material over a conventional 5Y material. If you don't have a gradient of translucency in your restoration, the difference between a natural tooth and your restoration will jump off the page at you. And you all remember that from metal ceramic days, right? A metal ceramic crown, you look at it, look maybe very good, but you change the light, you change the angle, and all of a sudden it'll opacify. That is what happens with a mono translucent material much more often, okay? So that's the real benefit of this material. So it truly is a multi-gradient material. When you hear these other materials, they're really multicolor. They're not multi-gradient. They don't have different layers of material. But I want you to understand that when you're buying a material, when you're looking at a material, you need to know the quantity of yttria in the material and understand where to place the stronger and the more translucent material so you take advantage of the two basic properties, the increase in strength of the 3 or 4Y material and the increase in translucency. Jed's come up with a way to alter the translucency by holding at different firing temperatures, all right? So you can get a little bit more lower translucency at 1500, a little bit higher translucency at 1600 degrees Celsius. So you want to make sure if you're getting a new oven today and your ovens, you're not happy with your oven, get one that you can get the temperature up to 1600 degrees. So that's what I do for my more translucent, which is typically anterior teeth. So for anterior teeth, I'm firing at the 1600 temperature. Maybe for a molar, I'm somewhere in between 1525, 1550 with these longer firing schedules that you see here. And it's important that you maintain these because one of the main reasons for really ugly zirconia is poor firing. So for a bridge, you're going to want to use a 4Y material or something like Prime. It's just a pure 4Y like Zircad MT or a couple of other on the market that are good materials. But ideally, I'm going to want to use a gradient material that has the 4Y and 3Y maybe deep in the connector that I could put a little thin layer of porcelain on or something like that if I want to. Or I could just have it a little more monolithic if I want to. I like to, on the anterior teeth, layer a little bit of porcelain, and I don't layer it all in the posterior. So where do we use our 5Y or our prime aesthetic materials? Not E prime, but prime aesthetic for single units, maybe an anterior bridge for the prime aesthetic material. And in a situation that understanding we fire it correctly, and yes, there is a little surface paint on here, but that's a very nice result. And so this is what I'm talking about. We can get this kind of result. I already showed you this slide earlier, completely a three-dimensional color, a three-dimensional translucency, but without layering. And it's not dead, but it's a dying skill set. And I'm fighting hard to try and keep that alive. What about a polychromatic tooth? People would always say, well, wait a minute, now if I've got multiple colors in my base, my prep, my stump, or whatever we want to call that, and I got a polychromatic tooth, it's not so easy to do. So I attempted 2 restorations. Here's the first one I tried, okay? And he liked it. The patient liked it. I didn't like it. I didn't think I did a great color match, so I remade that. This is 100% prime aesthetics with no porcelain. I have a whole bunch of articles. I can't get into all the steps on how I go from the left of the screen to the right of the screen. Please go to my webpage, edmclaren.com. And of the 98 articles I've written now, I got about 60 of them there. And there's 4 or 5 of them on optimizing the step by step of how you optimize translucent zirconia, how you go from left to right here.